As you can see over here in the view bar, it says I'm in the resource sheet view, so I must be. In any case, I want to go over the cost rates table that are provided for the work and material resources, and they're used when multiple rates are to be charged by resources working on a task. So for example, if Writer 1 charges one rate on one task and a different rate on another task, how do I make that change? Do I come over here and update it from $15 an hour to, well, let's say another task is $18 an hour? Forget it, you don't want to do it in this column because this will apply to all the tasks. So if the first 5 tasks are 15 and I come in here and say for the next 5 tasks they're going to be at 17, if I change this to 17, then all the tasks in the project resource Writer 1 is going to be assigned at 17. So you don't want to lose money and do it that way. I guess you could come down here and say Writer 1 number 2 or part B or something and assign that as the next rate for the other task, but I like to keep things organized and say, okay, let's just have one resource with a cost rate table that will update for different tasks that we can assign. Like for this task, it's going to be, $15 an hour, and without updating this, the standard rate column, for another task, it'll be $18 an hour, for another task, 20. You get the idea. The other use for the cost rates table is like, let's say, for varying costs, like the rise and fall of materials. Maybe a month into the project, glossy paper goes up to $50 a ream. In any case, you can go ahead and set the cost for your materials and your work at a certain point in time and say, okay, from this time forward, it's going to be at this rate. Like maybe Writer 2 is going to get a salary increase after a month into the project. So they'll be working at $15 an hour. Then when it hits a specific time, they'll be working at like maybe $20 an hour. So to go ahead and bring up this cost rates table for any resource here, your work and material resource types that is, go ahead and give it a double click and go to the costs tab. By default it's on the general tab. Just go ahead and flip to the cost tab and you can see here that you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different rates that you can set for this resource. The default rate has already been set when you typed it over here in the standard rate column for $15 an hour, and you can see it says default. So the letter A will be assigned to that resource that's assigned to any task. And then if we want to go ahead and say, okay, it's not $15 an hour for this task, then you can go ahead and choose another tab and say, okay, for other tasks it will be at this rate, and you get up to an additional 4 here. Okay, so let's say for tab B, for certain tasks, he's going to be charging maybe, let me click inside, $13.50, hit the tab key, and then for the overtime, project doesn't automatically do a calculation of your standard rate, so you have to calculate it if you want to do time and a half and type it in. If I want to do 20 and not go with the traditional time and a half, project isn't going to freeze up and say you can't do this. It gives you that control. So there's the second rate that I can go ahead and I'll show you in just a minute how you can assign the letter B here, the cost on tab B, to the resource that's assigned to a specific task. While all the other tasks that the resource has been assigned to, it's going to be the default here, okay? Now, another thing that we can do is that, like, let's say Writer 1 is going to have a salary increase at a specific point in time, a week or two into the project. So let me type in the date, 9/15/10, hit the tab key, so it accepts it. And then over here, let's say it's going to be 17.50. Or, you can type in the standard rate, or here's something else you can do. If you want to give the increase by a percentage, like let's say maybe 15%, type in plus 15 and add the percent symbol, hit the tab key, and project will automatically calculate $15 an hour plus 15%, and that's $17.25. You can also do it for the overtime rate field as well, plus, let's do, just for the sake of laughs, let's do 30%, hit the tab key, and there you go. And then when I'm finished, I can go ahead and click OK. Now, before I click OK and I start taking you around to show you the changes, because at this point in time, from the 15th on, there's going to be a change, and our costs are going to increase as long as Writer 1 is assigned to a task, from $15 to $17.25 an hour, and of course any overtime. So if I click Okie dokie, and remember, tab B is a different rate, okay? So when I click OK, let me come up here and right-click and change views and go to the Gantt chart, and right-click on the table header cell and go to the cost table, because as you recall, any changes that you make that affects a cell, in this case it's going to be the cost field, and it's going to be, well, tied to the resource Rider 1. It's going to be highlighted here. Now let's see if this makes sense. Now if you look over here in the Gantt chart, you can see that Rider 1 has been assigned to pretty much all these tasks here. Now notice that the changes have been highlighted for the summary task and also the project summary, just meaning that there are subtasks that have made some changes that affect the summary task, which makes sense. Okay, so what subtasks have those changes been applied to? Well, it's right here for modify outline. Now when does that start, that task? Is it before or after this salary increase on September the 15th? Well, if you come over here into the Gantt chart and hover over the corresponding taskbar, you can see it starts after the salary increase on September the 15th. So obviously that's going to increase the cost for this task that this resource has been assigned to because they're charging more, okay? And also more for that task, and there would be more down here if Rider 1 was assigned to these other tasks down below, so that's where it ends. Now, if you want to talk about alternative rates, in other words, not the salary increase that happens at a certain point in time, but like for a specific task, Rider 1 is not going to be charging their standard rate, which was on tab A, as you recall in the cost rates table, but tab B, to go ahead and say, okay, this tab B rate is going to be applied of this resource to this task that they're assigned to, then let's go ahead and change views. Let's go to a view where we can see the task and the resources that are assigned to them by coming over here and right-clicking on the view bar, and let's go to task usage, because in here it has the task and below that the resources that are assigned to it. So for review with subject matter experts, if I go ahead and change the default from letter A, well, it brings up a good point. How do I change the default letter A for this resource for the standard rate to the next letter B that has a different rate? The best way for me to go ahead and do this is to insert the cost rate table column by coming up here and right-clicking on the column header to insert it and type in cost. There we go, cost rate table, click on it, and there you go. By default, all of them are assigned the letter A, which is the default standard rate, and then for modifying an outline for Rider 1, if it's going to be a different rate, then go ahead and click on the drop-down arrow and choose B. Now if you go ahead and double-click and open up the resource assigned to that task, notice that on the General tab you can also change the cost rate table here, but I like to insert it because it's easier for me to quickly glance at it, and then if I have any questions when it comes to, increased costs, I don't have to go, when I come to this view, without seeing this column, what's the deal, and have to do a little bit more research. But when I leave it open like this, I can go, yeah, okay. That's tab B, and what is tab B? Well, I can go back to my resource sheet, pull up Rider 1's information, and be able to see the assigned costs for that rate that, as you recall, was on tab B. And that's it. So when it comes to this task here, Rider 1 is at a different cost rate than all these other tasks that he's assigned to for review with subject matter expert, or the one up above that, which is the standard rate on tab A. So if I come over here and I right-click on the view bar and go back to the resource sheet, double-click on Rider 1, I can make changes here, delete this, and say, okay, we just decided he's not going to get a salary. So if we delete, gets rid of that row, go to tab B, the standard rate for this letter B is going to be $13.50 an hour. So as we just saw, we assigned B to that resource that was assigned to that specific task. So they're getting a little bit less per hour on that task. Now, not only is this applicable to your work resources, but also your materials, like glossy paper. Just double click on that. Same thing. If you say at this point in time, effective, next week, we're going to see an increase instead of the standard 25, at least at that point in time, or up until that point in time, it was always $25 a ream. So when we assign materials before that, it'll be at 25, so it'll keep the cost up until we hit another point in time, and then it will jump up to whatever we assign in here, maybe at $35 a ream. And that way it's going to make it a lot easier for us to keep track of costs at different points in time and being able to view those changes, at least in the resource sheet view, if not by generating a report and being able to customize it and say, okay, this is what I want to see. And when we saw a jump in our costs there, well, if you want to compare baseline cost to your actual cost at specified points in time.
Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.